Okay, so ready for a deep dive into a case that's both chilling and incredibly puzzling?
I'm ready.
The Delphi Murders.
Yeah.
You've probably heard about it. It's two teenage girls, Libby German and Abby Williams, found murdered back in 2017.
Right.
But what makes this case so gripping, so unbelievably frustrating, is this evidence they left behind.
Yeah.
So just imagine the bravery it took for Libby to hit record on her phone as the suspected killer approached.
It's what's so fascinating and frankly disturbing about this case is that Libby's quick thinking actually provided investigators with that visual and audio recording of the suspect.
Right.
And yet 5 years on, he's still unidentified.
Yeah.
It really, I think, underscores the complexities of these criminal investigations.
Right.
Especially cases like this that are thrust into the spotlight, public scrutiny.
And it's like you're trying to catch a ghost. You have the image, you have the voice, but he's just out of reach.
You got it.
And that voice, we're going to actually hear it in a little while, but that phrase that he utters, down the hill, it's bone-chilling.
It is. Those two words, just those two words captured in those final moments have become so central to this entire investigation, haven't they? They've sparked countless theories, endless speculation. Does it suggest he was local? Was he familiar with the area?
Right.
Could it be like a signal, a clue to his identity?
Yeah, it's unsettling. It's really unsettling to think about.
Yeah.
But before we delve into the mystery of the voice and what it might mean, let's rewind back to February 13th, 2017.
Okay.
It seemed like a totally normal day in Delphi, Indiana.
Right.
Libby and Abby, they were best friends, 14 and 13 years old.
Yeah.
They decided to spend their day off from school. They're going to go hiking on the Delphi Historic Trails.
Yeah, idyllic outing. Right.
It seemed like it.
Dropped off near the Moon and High Bridge, a popular spot, picturesque.
Mm-hmm.
Hard to believe that such a beautiful place would become the backdrop for such a horrifying crime.
And that contrast between the setting and what happened is part of what makes it so haunting. So they're dropped off, they're excited to explore.
Right. What happens next?
So as the day went on, evening approached, their families realized something's terribly wrong.
Mm-hmm.
The girls weren't answering their phones. They hadn't returned to the designated meeting point.
Yeah.
A community-wide search immediately launched. It was just a desperate race against time.
And that's when, tragically, the unthinkable is discovered.
Yeah.
Libby and Abby's bodies were found the next day about a half a mile from the bridge.
It's hard to imagine the grief that must have swept through Delphi in that moment, The town's sense of peace.
Just shattered.
Of safety shattered.
Yeah.
But amidst that devastation, there was this glimmer of hope. Libby's phone, recovered at the crime scene,
Right.
held a vital clue, a video.
Wow.
She recorded as the suspected killer approached her and Abby on the bridge.
So this is where we go from tragic to truly terrifying.
Yeah.
Because in that video, we see him, the suspect.
Yeah.
He seems to be an older man, a blue jacket, jeans,
Okay.
and then in a chillingly calm voice, he issues a command. Down the hill.
Audio clip plays.
Down the hill.
Oh my gosh.
Just hearing that, it sends shivers down my spine.
Chilling.
You would think with this video, with this audio, identifying this guy would be it would be a slam dunk.
You would assume so.
Right.
Yeah, but that's the perplexing part of all of this.
Yeah.
Despite having this seemingly irrefutable evidence, the case remains unsolved.
Wow.
Hundreds of interviews, thousands of tips poured in, and yet the man in that video, the one who said those words, has managed to evade capture.
It's incredible, right? You've got this, it seems like a clear image, this audio recording, and still it's unsolved. Why hasn't this evidence been enough?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It really speaks to the limitations, even with our most sophisticated investigative tools, like take facial recognition technology.
Right.
You would think with the advances in that field, they'd be able to identify this guy in a heartbeat.
It seems like something out of the movies, right? Just run it through the database and boom, you got him.
Exactly, but it's not that simple.
Right. The reality is much more complex.
Good.
The quality of the video footage, the angle, the lighting, all these things can impact the accuracy of facial recognition software.
Yeah.
And in this case, we're talking about a video recorded on a cell phone. Probably, less than ideal conditions.
Yeah, so even with the advanced tech, sometimes the answers aren't as clear-cut as we'd like them to be.
Precisely. And then there's the voice.
Oh, right.
We've all seen those forensic crime dramas, right?
Right.
Where they analyze a voice recording, and it's like a fingerprint, completely unique,
Right.
completely identifiable.
That's all they need, and they break the case wide open.
You'd think so, but
Okay.
again, it's not always that simple.
Right.
Voice analysis can be incredibly helpful, don't get me wrong, especially for eliminating suspects. But it's not an exact science.
Right.
Background noise, the variations in the way somebody speaks, I mean, even something as simple as just having a cold.
Yeah.
It can all affect the outcome of that analysis.
So we're dealing with the limits of technology and the fact that human behavior, human speech, it isn't always, predictable or easily categorized.
Absolutely. And that brings us, I think, to another layer of complexity in this case, and that's those evolving suspect sketches.
Okay, let's talk about those, because that's something I've always found both fascinating and confusing.
Yeah.
You've got the video, but then these sketches are released, and they don't really quite match up.
Right, and that right there, that discrepancy has fueled so much speculation.
Right.
That initial sketch, I think it was released in 2017, depicted this heavier set, older man, which seemed consistent with the figure we see in the video.
Right.
But then, in 2019, a revised sketch comes out, and it showed a much younger, thinner man.
It's like, what happened? Did they get it wrong the first time?
Well, it's not necessarily about getting it wrong.
Oh.
We're talking about eyewitness accounts,
Right.
which are notoriously unreliable.
Right.
The way our brains process and store visual information, especially under stress, can be incredibly subjective.
So the initial sketch might have been based on what a witness thought they saw or what they remembered seeing, which, as we know, isn't always accurate.
Exactly, and as the investigation progressed, law enforcement probably gathered more information, maybe re-interviewed witnesses,
Right.
and felt like, you know what, we need to release a revised sketch, one that we believe is a more accurate depiction of the suspect.
It makes you wonder about those sketches, though, if they can change so drastically. Like, how much can we really trust what we're seeing?
That's a valid point, and it highlights the fact that these sketches are just one piece of the puzzle.
Right.
They need to be considered alongside all the other evidence.
Yeah.
And even then, you got to have a healthy dose of skepticism.
So we've got this complex kind of web of factors at play here. Technology that isn't foolproof, human perception that's flawed, and evidence that sometimes seems to contradict itself.
Yeah.
It's no wonder this case has stumped investigators for so long.
Yeah, it's a perfect storm of challenges, really.
Right.
And then you factor in that intense public scrutiny, the pressure to find answers. It's got to be all-consuming.
Oh, for sure.
Not just for law enforcement, I mean, for the public, too.
Oh, yeah. And speaking of the public, let's talk about some of the individuals that have become, focal points in this investigation.
Okay.
People who, for various reasons, have piqued the interest of, both law enforcement and the armchair detectives out there.
Right.
One name that comes to mind is Daniel Nations.
Right.
What's his story, and why did he end up on the radar in connection with the Delphi murders? So Daniel Nations, he becomes a person of interest in the Delphi case, and what's so compelling, so unsettling about his story is that he already had a history of violence, particularly towards hikers.
Right, and Nations was actually arrested in Colorado around the time of the Delphi murders for allegedly threatening hikers.
Yeah.
With a hatchet.
Wow.
So you take the nature of the Delphi case, right?
Yeah.
Two young girls hiking on this secluded trail, and you got Nations' history. It's easy to see why investigators took a closer look.
Absolutely. It's like that saying, if it looks like a duck, swims like a duck.
Right.
But in this case, it seems like the duck turned out to be a red herring.
Exactly. And that's the thing about these investigations. You have to follow the evidence, even if it leads you down a path that doesn't pan out.
Right.
And in Nations' case, despite that seemingly compelling circumstantial evidence, investigators were able to clear him as a suspect.
So another dead end, which brings us to another name that comes up, Ron Logan. What's his connection to the case, and why did he become a person of interest?
Logan's connection is particularly eerie because he owned the property where Libby and Abby's bodies were found.
Imagine that the crime you're investigating happened on your land.
Yeah, it's almost too much to wrap your head around.
Like something out of a horror movie.
Precisely. And to make matters even more complicated, Logan also had a criminal past.
So you've got the proximity to the crime scene, you've got the history, come on.
Right, it's easy to see why people would connect those dots. But just like Daniel Nations, investigators never actually charged Ron Logan in connection with the Delphi murders.
Right.
And while we may never know, the specifics of why certain leads were ruled out, I think what we can take away from this is these investigations, they're rarely as straightforward as they seem on TV.
Right.
It's a process of elimination, painstakingly following every lead, every thread, until you hopefully uncover the truth.
And in the case of the Delphi murders, that truth remains elusive. It makes you wonder, could the killer be somebody who's managed to stay completely under the radar, leading a totally normal life, just blending in?
It's a chilling thought, isn't it?
It is.
That the killer could be someone's coworker or their neighbor, someone we might even encounter in our everyday lives.
Right.
It speaks to the complexities of human nature, the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface, even in seemingly ordinary people.
It's a sobering reminder that we never really know what's going on behind closed doors, what secrets people might be hiding.
Right. And for the families of Libby and Abby, I mean, that lack of knowing, that lack of closure, it's got to be agonizing.
Absolutely, and yet amidst unimaginable grief, they've shown incredible strength and resilience, haven't they?
They have.
Becoming tireless advocates for their daughters, keeping their memories alive, and really urging anyone with even the smallest piece of information to just come forward.
Because as we've seen in this case, even the most seemingly insignificant detail could be the key to unlocking this thing.
Absolutely. You never know. Your tip could be the one that finally brings justice for Libby and Abby.
That's right.
Their case is a stark reminder that even in the age of all this advanced technology, forensic science, some mysteries just endure.
They do.
But it also highlights the importance of never giving up hope. Keep seeking those answers and honor the memory of the victims by demanding justice.
And for Libby and Abby, we can only hope that one day the truth will come to light. And until then, their story stands as just this chilling reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of, cherishing every moment and the enduring power of hope, even in the face of unimaginable tragedy.